Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. Welcome to Ascending with Venus Castleberg, a space where we explore the journey of spiritual awakening, expanding your consciousness and raising your frequency to create a whole new world. We'll dive into the possibilities that open up when you choose to follow the whispers and trust your inner knowing. Each episode is designed to guide you in expanding your awareness, tuning into your intuition, and discovering the magic of your life every day. We'll talk about living aligned with your soul's purpose, going beyond limitations, and creating a life and a world worth celebrating. You are here to embrace who you truly are and step into the infinite potential that's waiting for you. Let's ascend together. And now, here is your host, Venus Castleberg.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's so nice to be here with you all. I am very honored to have a very special guest today, Marc Lainhart. I got to know Marc a little bit ago, and one of the things that really stood out for me about him was his desire to really bridge the gap between the spiritual and the practical, and to really make it a little bit more real. So without further ado, I'm super happy to have you, Marc. Welcome.
Hi, Venus. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So we've already had lots of people. Thank you, Kathy, Sandy. Nice to see you. I like to just say hi to people who pop on and comment in the chats. You're always welcome to comment. We will go ahead and open up the lines. You can call in today, 202-570-7057 if you have questions specifically for Marc. But I have plenty of questions, so if you don't call in, it's okay. I'll keep him busy. But today we picked a topic today, and I loved it because I was like, this is so good, because I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't see things, so is it actually real? So let's actually even just start there. Like, how do you know that it's real even if you can't see it?
Yeah, so I always teach on just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there around you, right? And there's a lot of things that we take at face value that's not seen with the human eye, and it's always around us. For example, the air that we're breathing right now that allows us to go prospecting and have this interview is the air that we require, but we don't see it, but we depend on it. And when it's not there, we know it's not there, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I started down this path almost 2 decades ago, back in 2008, is when I really started to go down this spiritual pathway based on psychic and mediumship and spirituality and intuition and metaphysics. And there was a struggle there for me because the left brain was wanting to remain in the logical reasoning aspects of my mind. But there was things that were happening to me, Venus, that I just didn't understand. And the ego logical mind couldn't rationalize it, right? And most humans want to move into a belief system, but they want to see it here first. They want to see it with the physical eye. And for me, I was the same way. I wanted to see it, sure, the skeptic, the pundit, I want to see that before I actually start putting any effort or belief or hope into that, right? And over the course of those last 2 decades, I realized, no, we don't need to see it. We need to believe it because it comes from the power within. And when you start to believe it within, then you start to see it. And I always say that we have 3 eyes in life: 2 to look, 1 to see. And the one eye that I'm talking about is the third eye. And, history teaches us all about the pineal gland, the third eye. Ancient cultures going thousands of years back talk about the ancient wisdom that lies within the brain. Shoot, Einstein was quoted as saying that this 3.5-pound object in our brain is one of the most complex mechanisms in the universe. And so as I started to explore, or as my company's name is the Intuitive Prospector, because I believe everybody has intuition and we're all prospecting for something in life. And for myself and my journey, it really became a transition from caterpillar to butterfly over those years to learn that just because we don't see it here does not mean it's not around us. And there's a lot of things that can play into that. Like I said, air, gravity. We can have a debate on if gravity is real. Well, jump off a diving board and see if you can stay up in the air and not fall into the diving pool, right? Or in the swimming pool. And if that happens, I'd want to hear about it. And a lot of times, you know, I'm just here in my studio here in Seattle, and I look out and I got a big tree, and it always reminds me that we see the effects of the wind on the big tree outside my studio, but we don't actually see the wind with our physical eye. You only see the effects of the wind. So we can take everything, you know, from the Wi-Fi signal that's connecting us right now, energy, emotions. You can walk into a place and you can feel that, but you can't see it. You can walk into a church and be like, "Ooh." You can walk into a very historical place and go, "Whoa." You can feel that, but that is not seen with the physical eye. And so a lot of times, you know, when I started down this path and having this fight with my left brain versus my right brain, because the left brain, and we're going to do a whole episode on the brain because I know a lot about the brain, because unfortunately my older brother passed from brain cancer. But before he passed, he did a lot of brain scans and a lot of cutting edge studies on the brain. And I actually got to sit down with scientists and surgeons and talk about the brain. And so the left hemisphere of the brain is where our ego lies. That's where our rational, reasoning, logical, questioning mind, our speech and our memory lie right here in the left temporal of our brain. It's only about that big. So if you think of all the memories that you've had over your life, all of your soul adventures, all your speech and memory reside right here in the left temporal. But if we switch, and you know, Dr. Wayne Dyer talked about this all the time, if you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at start to change from here to feeling it. And so for me, it was really this transition of caterpillar to butterfly to move into my right hemisphere. The right hemisphere is where Einstein talked about all the power and creativity and the imagination lies. And it's also where your clairs reside. And the clairs are your spiritual abilities. These are things that I learned and was mentored on in my education and my training to go, okay, we have our 5 physical senses that we would all agree, and science would confirm that: see it, taste it, touch it, hear it, smell it, right? But when we move into a bigger ability of ourselves, we start working with clairvoyance, which this is called clairvoyance to see here. Clairsentience is using the body as the equipment, which is a radar system, right? The skin is the largest organ on the body. So clairsentience is feeling, like I said, walking into that historical place or walking into a church. So you work with the conjunction of your physical human senses, but now you start to open up to the clairs. And there's a lot of them. There's, you know, clairfactoria, the ability to smell; clairgustance, the ability to taste; clairaudience, the ability to hear. And it could be things that you're hearing that nobody in the same room is hearing. So your analytical, reasoning mind goes, wait a minute, why are you not hearing this? And I had to struggle with my wife because I would be feeling things, hearing things, knowing things, seeing things, and my wife would be like, I don't hear that. And so there's a struggle of, have I gone crazy? Am I hearing voices? And for me, I worked in healthcare for over 25 years. So I started self-analyzing because I started having connection to my brothers that had moved on into the spirit world, you know, years before. And through the power of meditation and through the power of visualization and working with these abilities that I'm talking about, I started to connect with them. And for me, the rational, logical mind was freaking out. The ego was like, this is, and it's interesting, Venus, because in history past, I believe that some of the mental health issues that we deal with today are actually known spiritual gifts. If we go back to indigenous people, indigenous times and cultures, they didn't isolate people that were having a spiritual connection or connecting to something bigger than themselves or hearing voices in their head, that clairvoyance, that clairsentience. They would actually surround them and build them through community. And I think over time that we're starting to realize that people have these abilities and the gifts, and it's not mental. There are mental health issues, of course, and you would have to go to a doctor for that. But I think that there are certain issues, and I reflect on my own journey to be like, well, maybe I'm not crazy, because 1, crazy people can't self-diagnose, and 2, mental health can be spiritual awakening. It's been confused to be a mental health and put a label on it, right? Make it a bad thing when it doesn't need to be a bad thing. It's the same thing with autism. It's the same thing with labels that we have for people that actually are high functioning and can connect to something that we just don't understand. And when we don't understand something, right, we question it or we back away from it, or it's a fear-based energy. And so it really is, just because we don't see it does not mean that it's all around us. And science teaches us that the brain, I like to blend my spirituality and my scientific approach. That's what I love about spirituality. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, because spiritual works with science to try to understand who we are in the world around us. But science teaches us that the brain can actually receive in different frequencies. you're in a dreamscape, or you work with sound baths or tones, the brain can receive. And it's funny because culture today is always talking about the metaverse, multidimensional theory, string theory. And so I always am questioning does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? Right. And so, for those of your listeners and those tuning in today, you may have these abilities and you may not get the logical answers that you're looking for, but be patient with yourself. Give yourself grace, because you're evolving, and especially when it comes, age begets wisdom. And as we get older, we start to have more experiences, and we're not so ego driven. Our first part of our life is to survive in this crazy world and develop the ego. But then you get to maybe a certain age or a certain point. For me, it was 27, because I went through extreme trauma and tragedy, what I refer to today and I write about, the TNT that blew my life up at the age of 27, because I lost both my brothers, one to murder, and then 3 days later, my older brother to diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. So those events triggered and changed something within me at the cellular level, at the auric level, the energy level, the vibration frequency. It all changed, and grief can do that. And some people are naturally born with this. I was not naturally born. I was introduced to it through my experiences, and that's why I started to explore and understand and get under a deeper education about what this all is, because this is only temporary, and death is not the end. That's the one thing I've learned. Death is not the end. We don't understand it, and we can be fearful of it. But Ram Dass talked about that this is the labor, this is the womb of what we're doing right now, and that death is actually the next beautiful experience that awaits all of us. Nobody's getting out of this. And that's the one thing I always just tell people, that that there's true statements about death and taxes is guaranteed to everybody, right?
Yeah, my husband actually sells insurance, and that's one of the things that he always says. We're all dying. We're all getting out of it. Yeah. So thank you for saying that. Now, you said something in the beginning, and I'm wondering if you've had a personal experience, because there is a difference between the physical eye and the spiritual eyes. But have you had a seeing? Have you seen with your physical eyes? Has it been something that you've experienced?
Yeah, so let's approach that, because there's two ways that I teach on, the objective way and the subjective way, right? The objective way, like as a medium, people ask me all the time, do you actually see the people that come to me from the other side, the etheric world, the spirit world, heaven, the afterlife, whatever your definition is of it? And I say, no, I become aware of their presence through my clairvoyance and my clairsentience. And so you can actually see in the objective viewpoint where I would actually, and it's only happened a few times, and I've done thousands of readings over the years with people all around the world, and I could count on my fingers probably 10 times that I've actually seen the physical presence of a person. So I'm seeing them objectively. Most of us see them subjectively in the mind. But here's the crazy thing, Venus. When we see it objectively with the actual physical eye, the ego brain kicks in and goes, did you really see that? Or is your eyes playing tricks? We start to try to debunk what's happening right in front of us in real time. And that's how powerful the ego mind is. And then we kind of back away and go, oh, that was just a coincidence or a synchronicity, which I just wrote about, the adventures of curiosities and coincidences, which, by the way, Einstein always referred to as synchronicities and coincidences of God's way of remaining anonymous, whatever or whoever God is for you and for me and for your listening audience. But for me, that's how I teach, is you're going to either see it objectively or you're going to see it objectively. Objectively with the physical eye, subjectively with the third eye. And, the other clairs can also have those experiences where you're hearing something or you're smelling something. When I had my first reading with a friend of mine when I was still developing, I could actually smell a pipe burning. And my friend was like, I don't smell anything. And I said, would you understand your grandfather to have smoked a pipe when he was alive? And she goes, no, I don't understand that. And I said, I can smell the tobacco. Well, after reading, she actually confirmed that her grandfather, who was in the spirit world, indeed did smoke a pipe. And she didn't know that. And so I always tell people when I work with them, some of the best evidence can come after a connection or a reading, because you've set the intention and the show is ascension, right? So from intentions to ascensions, and some of the best evidence will come because they know that you're prospecting, you're looking for that connection. And it can come through many different channels: signs, symbols, synergy, synchronicity. Those are the 4 S's I teach on, because I keep it simple. And it happens on a daily basis for me. And it actually is quite comforting and fun to know that I'm not on this journey alone, and that my brothers and all my loved ones and my friends and my family and my fur babies are just a thought away. But, a lot of people want that big booming voice, especially if you're on a religious path. you read, scripture. And for me, I was raised in religion. I've studied the top 10 religions around the world, and there's such correspondence to all the different religions. It's quite interesting. But nobody ever talks about the big booming voice that you get from the sky. I have not yet had that. I've not talked to somebody that's had that. And, if it does happen, I'd love to hear about the experience and see, how that's possible. Because I think anything is possible in what we do. So, yeah, but I've had my own experiences. And I think the one thing that's really been interesting this last year, because I've had a lot of transformations last year, is working with plant medicines that come from the earth that are very ancient and have allowed me to see with the physical eye objectively through the power of plant medicines. And that, for me, really helped my logical mind, and it really crushed my ego because I was seeing it and I had to surrender everything. When you work with plant medicines, and my experiences were so amazing, so supporting and loving and bigger than myself, and I'm actually seeing it with my physical eye while I'm awake, it's pretty powerful. And again, nothing new. Everything I'm talking about has been around for thousands of years, ancient wisdom and ancient knowledge that I believe a lot of us are starting to tune back into.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you also said something key too, though, like if you believe it. Because I remember when I first started opening, I had quit partying, drugs, alcohol. Like I actually cleaned my system of all the stuff. And then I was practicing seeing with my physical eyes, and I could see stuff. But it was like I just believed I could. It was just and then I started hearing things, and then I got a little freaked out and I shut all that down. And then they had to start coming into my spiritual eyes because I wasn't playing with the physical stuff anymore. Because like you said, there is something when you do start to see objectively, it does challenges everything, the way that you view life, the way that you respond. I always call it my paradigm smash. So it was like the end of my paradigm as I knew it, right? But I'm wondering, because I know a lot of people, I get this a lot, I'm sure you probably do too, is that they're just like, I really want to see. And it's like, my question, I think, is more from how do you address that for people? But also yeah, let's start there. Let's start with how do you address that when somebody's like, I really want to see, but I can't see?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I would start with our DNA of who we are as a species. And what I mean by that is if we take our DNA, which we now have sequenced, and we have knowledge of our own DNA, which we didn't have 50 years ago. When I was incarnated into this physical world, we did not have an understanding of our DNA. We understood the connections, but we hadn't broken down the actual sequence of all DNA. And if you take the DNA and you cut a strand of DNA and put it between two pieces of glass from a scientific standpoint and look at it under a microscope, you'll actually see within the DNA is what we call the flower of life, the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio. And so at your DNA level, it is within you versus outside of you. And a lot of us, like you said, you gave up, you got your system clean, you gave up on drugs. A lot of us will experience and try these different modalities in the physical world because sometimes we're trying to hide from our pain or dull down our grief or our unhappiness, if you will. And when I realized from a scientific standpoint that it all starts within us at the DNA level, that you can actually see with the physical eye, again, that golden flower of life, that golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, then you go, oh, I don't need to go to a location. I don't need to worship a certain figure, from the likes of Buddha to Krishna to Gandhi to Jesus. They were all amazing people in history, but they were connecting to the ancient wisdom and knowledge that I'm talking about. And it's at your level of your own being. So if you start to believe it within, if you believe it here, you'll start to see it here. And I always say, believe it, see it, achieve it. So for your listeners that are struggling, it's because they haven't taken the time to disconnect so they can make the time to reconnect. The same philosophy that Rumi taught on in the 12th century, he always talked about the more silent and still you become, the more you'll hear. And in today's crazy world, we don't connect or see or hear because we have such gadgets like this, our smartphone, our news cycle, our alerts that actually trigger us, that gain our attention like Pavlov's dog. A bell rings and all of a sudden you're looking to go, okay, what's that alert? What's going on in the world? And so I would say get away from that. Get into nature. Our first home is nature. Get away from distractions and get into your being of who you are and why you're here. You know, a lot of people get into this human mentality that we're here to work a job to pay for things that we can't take with us anyway. And there's so much more to your journey than just working a 9-to-5 job. It's about connecting with people. It's about inspiring people, loving people, helping people, serving people, helping the planet. I mean, it just, all of this unfolds when the time is ready for you, but it has to be the intent to come from within. And a lot of us, you know, especially with today, like all the, you know, online service, I could get on my keyboard right now and order something that's at my door 3 hours later, right? The spiritual connection doesn't work that way. People ask me all the time, Venus, you know, and what I do and, you know, connecting with loved ones from the other side. And they always say, well, where's heaven? And I said, well, heaven is a vibration. Heaven isn't a location. And it's the same thing with how we vibrate. When we vibrate to a certain tune or frequency, just like a radio station, just like a television station, just like this station here, we have to tune in to find that right frequency. And I always laugh because people think that heaven is up. And this is how I was taught when I was a little boy. You know, in my Catholicism classes, we were taught that if you weren't good enough, you went down. And if you were good enough, you went up, right? And at that time, they actually taught on purgatory. And if you weren't either one, you stayed right here. And it just didn't make sense to me. But if we think about it from a spiritual, metaphysical standpoint, we can't go up or down. We're on a round planet going around a big ball of fire out in space. There is no up or down. So when you realize that, you realize that the world that we can't see is right here. It's just a world within worlds, different frequencies, different vibrations. The frequency that's in your heart is generated by energy. And if we adjust that energy and frequency and speed it up, my physical vibrating matter flesh suit actually would disappear. I'm still here. I'm just not vibrating at a way that you could see me, just like you understand my communication right now, because it's a vibration off a vocal cord. That's how we communicate, where this is quite primitive. And if you start moving up into here, this is where a lot of advanced cultures, a lot of advanced communications would be up here in the mind, not down here in the throat, because this is just a vibration.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it's a great way to look at it. And did you get, you probably did, but out there, thank you everyone who's been saying hi, and I love you guys. I'm really grateful for you being here. Usually I call everybody out by name, but there's lots of comments today. If you have questions, please feel free to call in 202-570-7057, or you can drop them in the comments. I will catch the questions for sure. But do you remember the books of Prophet?
Well, yeah, I read that.
Did you ever see? A long time ago, I know, but they made a movie out of that. Did you know that? Like it was like a B-rated movie or a C-rated movie, right? But I remember one of the things that stood out the most was kind of what you were just talking about, was that like there were people living on the same planet. There were people still fighting wars, and then there were people living like even in the war zone but they were at a different frequency. They were vibrating at a different level, so that the people who were fighting wars couldn't even see them, right? But they were still there. And it just, like, the visual representation for me, because I'm a visual person, was so impactful, because I finally got like how heaven can be here on earth. Like, and it's a state of mind. It's that energy, right? And not necessarily like going somewhere else. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. It was really cool. I have more, of course, but I think we're going to go. Go ahead. Yeah.
Let me add to what you were just saying real quick, because this, like I said, that struggle of the analytical mind versus the spiritual awakening mind. I don't remember who said it, but they talked about it. It might have been Carl Sagan that talked about the more unreal the world around you gets, the more real that you get. And you know, if you look at what's going on in the world today, it's very unreal. It's very like, you know, but at the same time, I'm not bothered by it, because I'm not tuned into that frequency of, you know,
right.
I'm empathetic and compassionate to what's going on in our planet, and keeping an eye on what's going on. But at the same time, I'm not committed. I'm not invested. I observe. I don't absorb. And so, you know, the teachers from past always talked about the more real you get with yourself, the more unreal the world will get around you.
Oh, that's so good. Yep. And Just he did talk about something. If for those of you who maybe didn't hear Mark, he talked about like getting into nature and being out in a different frequency and a different vibration without our little boxes. For those of you who know me well, you know that my phone never rings because I don't ever have the sound on. So if I feel the pull to look at my phone and you happen to be calling, then I'm like, oh look, somebody's calling. You know what I mean? And at 19, I gave up news. It was just something that I knew at 19 years old that I was just like, I can't watch news anymore. Like like you said, being empathetic, being aware. But I always find if there's something big enough in the news, somebody tells me. Like I don't even have to watch it. So what I love that. Like the more unreal everything gets around you, the more real you become. Well, with that, we're going to take a really short break. We'll be right back. Come on back, guys.
Om Times TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome forward. I'm here with Marc Lainhart, and we are talking about just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. You talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but I'd love to talk about it some more. What are some ways that people could perceive or acknowledge that is telling them that something is there, even if they can't see it?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. Like I said, nature's a big one. Working with different music modalities really can change the frequency. The one thing that everybody has that we forget about, and it's one of the most powerful tools that is free and accessible 24/7, 365, is our breath. And I know people are like, wait a minute, our breath. Yes, there are many techniques that can really help you to get connected to that vibration just through the power of breath. For example, 2 modalities that I work with a lot is Soma breath work, S-O-M-A, breath work, where you actually get into a state of doing your breath work like a meditation, like a guided meditation. And you get into a state of where the blood, the oxygen in your blood actually decreases. So you get into a hypoxia state. You're not going to die. You're not going to cause any injury or harm to yourself. But it gets you to the point where you're so relaxed and the monkeys in your mind have actually calmed down and stop fighting amongst each other. And that is an ancient technique that goes back centuries that I started to tune into, because there were times that it can be very overwhelming in this world. Like you said, the news that comes in is like drinking from a fire hose, and it's all around us. And for some people, that may cause anxiety or depression or PTSD triggers. And for me, there were times I just felt like I couldn't breathe. And so my mentors and my counselor helped me to understand the breath work of really healing and moving into a place to connect. And what's really cool is we would actually put a pulse oximeter on my finger when I first started this. And I would start out at, perforating about 98.9% oxygen in my blood. And after 20 minutes of doing deep instructful breath work, I would get down to like 94%, 93%. The lowest I've been is 88% oxygen in my body. But you're in such a state of just zen and relaxation, and you're like, all I did was work with my breath. I became aware of my own breath. And Eckhart Tolle teaches on this all the time. The greatest agent for change is your awareness to what is going on with you as a incarnated physical being. And we forget to breathe. It's an unconscious, and when we make it conscious, then it can really change, and it can heal. It can change who you are at the cellular level, at the alchemy level. And the alchemy is something that was, predated before science. Alchemy is now considered science, but the alchemy of who you are can change in so many ways just through the power of breath. And I find that to be very, very cool. But nature, breath work. The other modality that I work with is cold water immersion. And if you really want to freak yourself out, I live here in Seattle, and I can go down to the Puget Sound, and I usually go like once or twice a week, and I get into 51-degree temperature water, and it takes your breath away. And so I work with different modalities of how to control the breath, because the mind starts freaking out that you're going to actually die, but you're not. And after a minute of just working on focusing on my breath, I can swim for 5 to 10 minutes without any threat of hypothermia. And so, this comes back to not just breath work in the mind. You can go back. Harvard did studies on the Buddhists, the monks in Tibet and Nepal, and the things that they would have to do based on mindfulness and breath work. Go out in the dead of winter, completely soaking wet like a shirt, and they couldn't come back in the temple until they actually warmed up their body and actually dried the shirt. So the power of the mind is very, very powerful if you become aware of how great you are and how powerful you truly are in that divinity within. And people may be like, you said divinity within. Yes, the divinity within, because it's at your DNA level. And many of the teachers, including Jesus, talked about the divinity within all the time. It's not out here, it's in here. So if you start prospecting in here, it's going to unfold many different things for you to connect in whatever way is right for you. You can go to different classes and teachers and mentors. For me, I did a lot of different studies, from biofeedback to soma breath work to hypnotherapy, to try to understand and to heal from what the world has thrown at me. And there's many different ways to connect, but I would come back to the power of breath. And Venus, I believe in it so much, I actually had it tattooed right here, which is the oldest Sanskrit known to man. And it's about the breath in, because what's the first thing you do when you come here to this planet? You take that breath in, and then the journey's never a straight linear path, and then you exhale. How amazing you are, because before you breathed air, you were breathing what? Liquid. So you went from breathing liquid 9 months in the womb to incarnating into the physical form to breathe air. And the next journey is no different, except you don't need your lungs now to breathe. You're going to actually move into the consciousness of source. And the laws of physics tells us that the energy in your heart, the laws of physics states that energy, unseen energy, has to return to source. It just doesn't, just poof, stop existing. So the energy that's in your heart will have to return to the source. And again, the source is based on your own perspective.
I love that. I actually love that you answered a question before I even asked it. I was going to ask you your take on divinity and God and source, but you just gave it to us. So that's awesome. So I love the breath work. I'm wondering if you would be willing to maybe take us through a little bit of an exercise with that today.
Sure. Okay. Like minute wise, or just a couple minutes, or?
Yeah, actually we have about 10-15 minutes you could go for if you wanted to. But so, yeah, just an exercise to help people kind of connect in. Because like you said, I know that we often look for the answers outside of ourselves. We're looking for, the how, or the proof, or the justifications, the connections, right? Instead of being like, okay, what if I came here for my answers? So I'd love if you'd be willing to take us through a practice of like bringing us within for our own connection to ourselves and to our answers.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is, for your listeners, is get to a place where there's no distraction. Murphy's Law, if we try to do this, your phone's going to go off. You're going to get an alert. So get away from anything that can distract from you, because I've seen it many times where we try to get into that connection of our higher self or the divinity of the spiritual world, and then somebody's phone goes off or somebody knocks at the door, or, because the mind is going to start playing tricks on you. The mind is going to want to, take you to places that things you didn't do today, things you need to do tomorrow, things you didn't do yesterday, right? So what I would tell people is put your feet on the ground and get grounded to Mother Earth. Get rid of any kind of distractions and set an intention to ascension. And it all comes back with the power of breath. And what I teach people is take your hand and put it over your heart. It shows the physical touch of your incarnation, it being an incarnated being, having human experiences. And when you take a deep breath in, you want to breathe in through your nose, because breathing through your mouth, it goes right to your lungs. If you breathe in through your nose, it warms the air up and it goes down and it fills the lungs with warm air. Plus, this is a filter system, so you want to have a filter system to breathe in air. If you're breathing in through your mouth, it's not as healthy. And so even breathing the right way. And as you take a breath in, your stomach should extend out. And what I mean by that is that means that you're activating what in Qigong we call the dantian, which means the heater, which means that you're breathing from the whole aspect of your core, from your belly button up to your throat. So with hand over heart, set an intention that you want to connect to something bigger than yourself without fear. Fear is false evidence appearing real, and what we don't understand, we kind of move back. Move into that. Move into love. Move into support. The spirit world is very loving and very supporting, and anything else is your conscious mind ego activating. So with your hand on your heart, feet on the ground, set the intention for whatever that intention is for you right now, and take that deep divinity breath in. And when you get to the top of your breath, just hold that breath for a second. The chi, the prana, the life force, the human energy force. If science has many different naming for it. And just feel yourself pulsating. Hand over heart. You've got all that air inside you now, that prana, that chi. And with a nice big sigh, just release out through the mouth. Now, take another nice deep breath in, and this is where the ego starts to get a little bit of anxious. Growing up as children, we were taught to sit on our hands or not move because the ego wants to always move. And so when the ego starts to kick in, tell the ego to step outside your body. You can even name your ego, a person, a place you think you just don't resonate or don't like, and tell your ego to step away for a second. So, for example, my ego's name is Igor, like from the movies, Igor. So I tell Igor to step outside. And then I come back to my breath. And we just come back to our breath, and the mind starts to calm down. So we take another nice divine breath in. And as you breathe in, you're setting intention for what you want in your world and what you want for your body. It might be healing. It might be direction. It might be guidance. And just hold on to that chi, that prana energy that's within you. And with another nice big sigh, release what doesn't serve your higher good, what doesn't serve the higher path. And this becomes a sequence of in and out, inhalation, exhalations. And now we're going to go through a 4 count. And this is the same type of breathing that I first learned as a first responder, that the Navy SEALs and the military use. And it's a 4 count breathing. So you're going to breathe in through your nose to the count of 4. So taking that breath in, 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath now for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Exhale now for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. Take a nice deep inhale, count of 4. 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath for 4. 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 4. Hold again for 4 at your own count now. Take another nice deep divinity breath in to the count of 4. Hold that breath. 3, 4. Now release. 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath for 4. And then take a nice deep breath in again. And just come back to yourself. And that's called box breathing. It's actually a way of just a 4 count. You can take the count from 4 seconds all the way out to 20 seconds if you wanted to, if you want to go deeper in your breath. And just become aware of your own presence. Become aware of how you feel. And we only did that just for a minute. Look at your mind, examine your mind, observe your mind and where it's at. It should be calmer. It should be more relaxed. Give it a second. It'll jump back in, right? Because you can't shut the ego mind off until you reach death. But it's a way to maintain through the power of breath and through the power of touch, also expanding your auric field, calming your nervous system down. Another way that you can calm the mind is by humming, because it's really hard to hum. That's why chanting becomes very important. Ancient chanting, we just did this in group the other night. Chanting or humming doesn't allow the brain to think. Try it. Try humming and thinking at the same time. It's literally very difficult. Somebody might be able to do it, but it's very difficult if you start humming. That's why music, chanting, sound baths become very important, because it calms the ego mind, because the mind is wanting to survive. The ego is there to protect you, to be opinionated, to be competitive, but you don't need the ego all the time, right? Because who's the one person you talk to the most in your entire life? Right? Listen to everything that you're telling yourself, right? And is that ego giving you positive instruction, or is it giving you self-sabotaging negative instruction? It's no different than the old cartoons of the devil on one side and the angel on the other, and they're both whispering in your ear. You have to decide what you're going to listen to, which one you're going to feed more, and the power of breath. And again, I learned this when I first joined the Coast Guard. They taught us how to breath to deal with stressful situations. It had nothing to do with spirituality. Same with firefighting. They worked on us to control our breath so we could focus on the job at hand, whether that was saving a life, putting a fire out, extracting somebody from a car. You had to work with your breath to stay in that moment. Spirituality and connecting to something bigger than yourself is no different. The difference is you're not saving somebody's life. You're actually connected to your life in a deeper meaning, in an ancient way. So does that make sense? Did that just that 2 minutes, about 2 minutes worth? You can start to set an intention every day when you wake up to work with your breath, to work with mantras, to set intention to ascension. That's your show, Ascension. So might as well tie into that as well, right?
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I love the connections that you always do. And for those of you who don't know, Marc does have his own show, and it's called The Prospector. So you want to say anything about that, Marc?
Yeah, I have a Friday show called Metaphysical Meetup with Marc Live through my my YouTube channel and my Facebook. It's Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we talk about all these different topics, anything metaphysical, and it's a community. So it's, I like to say unity through community, very much like this. I see comments coming in, see Victor coming in. Hi, Victor. And it's sharing through community, but with social media too. And this, that you'll get people that come in and that try to spam you, or, and so I got a really good team that keeps my community very uplifting and positive and inspirational. So that's my Friday show. And then I have my Wednesday show, Podcast Inspired Living, that we've been on the air for 9 seasons now, and just get to talk with amazing people like yourself and talk about topics, but help inspire people. And the mantra for the show is be inspired, inspire others, inspire before we expire. And, it's just really helping people with, grief, death and dying, the journey within, the science of it, the spirituality of it. And I really love what I do, and, and being in service and helping people. But yeah, so that's my Friday show. And then Wednesday's my live podcast. And then, so that's
cool. Awesome. Well, I intentionally have not asked Marc about how he awakened and what happened then, because we are going to cover that in our upcoming summit. We have a How Do You Know You're Not Crazy summit coming up in just 10 days from today. And we'll drop a link in the comments if you'd like to join the summit. We'd love to have you. We have other great guests, Victor Furman, Melissa Seaman, Anthony Mattis, Reagan Thompson, just some great people out there who had what some people might think were crazy things happen to them, and how did they navigate that? And then how did they actually create a life of thrival from that awakening? So if that sounds like fun for you, it will be live on the 18th and 19th. So if you'd like to come join us and learn more from these people, we're going to have some gifts and just a all around great community to just talk about the things that we can kind of only talk about in these circles, right? So you don't necessarily talk to everybody about this sort of stuff, but you do have a safe place here. It sounds like Marc has some communities you can join. We have Bridging Realms, Becoming Spiritually Gifted on Facebook, and of course, Bridging Realms YouTube channel and Om Times, just places where you can come together with like-minded individuals and realize that maybe you're not so crazy after all.
I always tell people, some people call me crazy and other people call me for advice. Again, so it's, everybody's going to have an opinion, and the only way not to be judged is to not say anything, do anything, or be anything. So you might as well be everything you can to help others and to inspire others. And yeah, it's a great journey. And surround yourself with community, surround yourself with like-minded people, because you may have an experience and other people would say, oh, you were having a crazy spell. But if we put that in a book and publish it, wait 3,000 years, now it becomes a religion, right? So, one person's vision can be another person's following, right? So, the journey, you came into this world alone, so shall you return. So surround yourself with like-minded people if you're really prospecting to find something bigger than yourself or heal from your journey, the sum of your experience. Find the diamond within. That's what I teach on, because diamonds are only created under extreme pressures. And if you can find that diamond within and reveal it, your life changes in dramatic ways, and very fun, healthy ways as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of that, like how do you navigate through like the naysayers or the people who do call you crazy? Like what's your response, or how do you deal with that?
Early in my journey, I'll be honest, very transparent. Early in my journey, because it was real to me, right? I was having the experiences. I was connected in ways I'd never connected, and really was unlearning a lot of what I've been taught, right? In the spiritual pathways, you have to almost unlearn everything that you have been taught, because you realize that doesn't necessarily been taught the right way or the accurate way. Even our history is not taught the right way, right? And so for me, I would say take it one day at a time, right? Give yourself a lot of patience and grace. The caterpillar does not become the butterfly without the extreme struggle of the cocoon. And when I mean extreme, the caterpillar is screaming, this is the end of the world. I'm deliquefying, I'm melting. And then it reliquefies within the cocoon phase to emerge as the butterfly and go, holy crap, this is a whole new perspective. This is a whole new world. And you've changed, but you can still keep your relationships, treat people with kindness, right? Be kind, caring, compassionate is how I always finish up my shows. And we can still have civility, but that's not going to be reciprocated back with the work that we do. But, just because you became the butterfly, that caterpillar is not a bad caterpillar, right? But it's hard to have butterflies speak with caterpillar people, including friends and family, right? So you sometimes have to love them from a distance, and you have to, embrace the noise. You have to accept the noise, let it pass through. It doesn't feel good, but by running from it or, not paying attention to it, then it can catch up with you. And so when I first started out doing this, to be honest with you, I had all these visions of, oh, I'm a psychic. And at that time growing up, I remember there was a TV show, 1-800-CALL Psychic Wanda. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's not my vision of what I thought this was going to be. And, through the last 2 decades, I've had friendships and family, judgment and relationships. But at the same time, I've also been introduced to some amazing people and communities. So it's like for every time one relationship went away, 2 new ones came in, because you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And here's the thing, Venus, you can lead a human to knowledge, but you can't make them think. And we're the sum of our own experiences. And some people haven't had the experiences. Some people don't want those experiences. They love status quo, blinders on. I'm going to just stay in my lane, plow my own field, and not be. For me, it wasn't the same, because I've always been curious since I was a little boy. I've always had that curiosity to explore from everything from aliens, extra-dimensional beings, to Bigfoot, to death and dying, to angels, to the list goes on and on. And for me, now it's just noise. It doesn't bother me anymore. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You almost build a thicker skin, a callus. It's like a scar, right? When you cut yourself, the scar hurts, but it heals over. And you don't necessarily pay as much attention to it. So for me, I know when I set my intention to be in service, to help others, to inspire others with what I do, the intent is there, and there's always going to be a person in the crowd that is a naysayer. Or, remember the Muppets, the 2 guys that would sit up in the balcony and just be like the negative, like, oh, that guy's not gonna. There's always going to be that, y'all. And for your listeners, today is all you have. You have to carpe diem today, because yesterday is history, tomorrow's the mystery, today is the gift. That's why we always refer to it as the present moment. And when you realize how many people pass around the world every single day on average, which is about 150,000 people a day on average, not including war, not including, pandemics, that's a lot of people. So you have to really come back to how much time, your greatest commodity is your time. I'm sure you know how much money is in your bank account, but you do not know how much time is in your time account of what you have here. So you might as well make the best of it. And, I tell people the 3 C's in life: make a choice, take a chance, see the change if you truly want to see a change in your life. And if you don't risk it, there'll never be a biscuit. So life is short. Life is short. Do it. And so don't pay attention to, believe in yourself. Don't pay attention to the naysayers. It does hurt, especially with social media, and people can be very cruel, but arise above that, because that's your vibration too. The low vibration is based on jealousy or violence or negativity. When you raise your vibration, again, you're the butterfly having butterfly speak with caterpillar people. You can still do it, but it's not as constructive and it's not as healthy as it once was when you were a caterpillar.
I love that. That's actually a really great analogy. It's like, it really makes sense. It's like, now you're a butterfly and you're trying to talk to caterpillars, and you don't have to. And that's something I always teach my people too, is just like, ask a question. Can this person receive what I want to tell them? And if you get inside, it's heavy or it's not light and you can't, they're not going to be able to receive it, then don't say it. Just
love from a distance, right? Love is the ultimate vibration. The one thing I've found in all my readings I've done is the love that connects us from this world to the unseen world. And, love them from a distance and hold space for that person, because you're vibrating higher, and that you may inspire that person and maybe have them change their perspective about life and their own journey. So,
yeah, be the invitation. That's great. Yep. Show them a different way. You don't have to necessarily tell them a different way. Show them a different way. So that's beautiful. So is there one message from the unseen world you think more people need to hear right now? And if so, what would it be?
I would say trust your intuition. There's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of information out there, and it comes back to the journey of self. To know thyself has been, spiritual knowledge for many, many centuries. And so, use your intuition to navigate this journey, and to, because again, there's just a lot of information out there. And I truly believe as humans that we don't create knowledge, we access knowledge. We access wisdom. And you're seeing that with our technology, artificial intelligence that's coming in. But when you use the intuition, which is that knowing or feeling something without that rational evidence that the ego mind wants to have, for me, that's why I called my company the Intuitive Prospector, because I believe everybody has intuition, and you can prospect for the things that you want to find the diamond within. I always say, dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover the diamond within and the many hidden gems all around us. And, take it one day at a time. Come back to that present moment, come back to your breath, work with your intuition, and, don't get so far out in the future, because the future is never guaranteed. And you can't, unless you have a time machine, and I'd love to know if you did, we can't go back and change time, even though we want to. And, be okay with failure. We're in such a society that it's not okay to fail. It is okay to fail for me, because for me, it's an acronym: first attempt in learning. And why are we all here? The school of life is to learn, to grow, to, whether you believe in reincarnation or elevation or ascension to another journey. All the major religions talk about reincarnation at some point within their scriptures and their doctrine. And so, it's the progression of your soul one day at a time. But trust your intuition, even though what your eyes are telling you or what somebody else is telling you. Because a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, your intuition, which is your gut, that's where your psychic arena, that's where your umbilical cord was when you were breathing liquid. Trust your gut. Put your hand over your belly button, take a deep breath in, and just see what downloads, what connects to you, and trust that process, because the way knows the way, and we get in our own way because of the ego mind. So the way knows the way. Trust the process. Be patient. One day at a time. Give yourself grace, and surround yourself with like-minded people, and find teachers and mentors that will push you and grow you and help you and educate you. Just like, I wouldn't be here today talking about this with you, Venus, without standing on the shoulders of, the pioneers before me, my mentors, my teachers, and everything that I've done up to this point. So, and the spirit world, very intelligent, very smart. And that's probably what I would say for that question.
Oh, that's I love that. Thank you so much. Trust yourself, trust your intuition. Definitely. If I didn't say it before, the How Do You Know You're Not Crazy Summit is free. So please sign up. We'll drop the link again in the comments. If you liked anything that Marc had to say and you'd like to get more from him and learn his personal story, please tune in. Sign up for the How Do You Know You're Not Crazy Summit. We would love to have you. And we start in just 10 days. So thank you, Marc, so much for all your contributions, really just who you are in the world and your heart and what you're here to, your heart of service. I'm just really inspired by that. And thank you. So thank you, everyone. Grateful for you. We'll see you next time. Bye.